Something's been happening in Russia that hasn't been much discussed in the mainstream news, but which is a real indicator we should be paying attention to. Because really, this is going to be a crucial element affecting your reality, probably in the near-term future. When we look at the authoritarian major power in the world, China, we are used to the fact that it has been introducing an advanced digital surveillance system that it uses to control internet usage very strictly and monitor its citizens and so on. We might also be vaguely aware that it has been selling some bits of that technology to other countries that have an interest in some element of it. But we have another authoritarian leader in Putin's Russia, where we've seen little of that recently. Much more old-school, Soviet-style authoritarianism. And we have a growing level of autocracy in the United States, of course, and a number of copycat MAGA would-be authoritarians in Europe, with no real idea yet how that will begin to express itself in terms of the technology. Well, Russia is now catching up. It's worth us noting what that looks like. Russia has mandated that its state-backed messaging app, Max, now comes pre-installed on all phones, tablets and smart TVs sold in Russia. The aim is to replace foreign messaging services such as WhatsApp and Telegram. The introduction of Max has come alongside disruptions to those services. Last month, a state regulator said it was partially blocking calls on such apps to, quote, combat fraud, extortion and terrorism, which, as we know, are terms that have very expansive meanings in the authoritarian-approved dictionary. The Kremlin was reported to have ordered officials and lawmakers to migrate their Telegram channels to Max. A State Duma deputy warned that WhatsApp should prepare to leave the Russian market. This is seen as part of a process of tightening state control over the internet, all those free thinkers with their large audiences on Telegram, and all those apps with end-to-end encryption. And indeed, it's just the first part of a three-tier approach. On top of state-approved internet communication platforms, you also have AI-powered censorship and, most insidious of all, targeted tracking systems for the population. As Masho Lomashvili and Natalia Antaleva put it on Coda, the system is no longer about just restricting information, it's about creating a digital ecosystem where every click, conversation and movements can be monitored, analysed and controlled by the state. First of all, we should understand that Max, the software, is not just a messenger substitute. It's more akin to China's WeChat, not just for chatting with friends or posting to groups, but an essential component in living your life, used to access government services, used to be able to sign documents electronically and to make payments. Basically, a monopoly on everything to enable your digital life, just without that pesky privacy and encryption. Because, of course, if you've got nothing to hide, then you'd have no need to keep any secrets from the famously tolerant and indulgent Russian authorities. Not only is Max unencrypted, but users have been noting that it snatches unauthorized access to cameras on your device. Users have reported that the app turns on their cameras every 5 to 10 minutes. Then there is another app called the Amina app. Foreign workers from 9 countries for now, including Ukraine, India, Pakistan, Egypt, are required by law to install Amina so it can constantly transmit their location to the Ministry of Internal Affairs. If the Amina app doesn't receive location data for 3 days, the individuals concerned automatically get added to a controlled persons registry, making them effectively third-class citizens, not able to access banking or marriage or property ownership or to enrol their children in schools. Is this Chinese technology inspired by the biggest digital authoritarian on the planet? Possibly. But then it could equally have been inspired by the Trump administration, which, thanks to Peter Thiel's Palantir, is already rolling out something very similar. Palantir's Immigration OS offers near real-time tracking of individuals. The app is supposed to streamline the end-to-end immigration lifecycle from identification to removal. It gathers biographical and biometric data from government databases to identify immigrants who should be targeted. It grouped people according to different categories, such as their origin, their point of entry into the country, their residency permit status, identifying features, hair and eye colour, license plate numbers, scars and tattoos. Amnesty International described the app as alarming for the human rights of immigrants and people seeking safety in the United States. Ricard Martinez of the University of Valencia said that it is a methodology of total social control to maximize the efficiency of immigration agencies in deporting immigrants. And he said this: "It is simply abhorrent because it strips human beings of all dignity and all rights. The goal is to have absolute control over a certain category of people and completely curtail their freedom." He also had a dim view of the app developer Palantir, saying this: "Palantir is ideologically aligned with the Trump administration and its ethics favour totalitarianism." History tends to suggest that what becomes normalised for one group becomes much easier to then be applied to other groups in the future. So, something to look forward to. Back to Russia, this sort of surveillance has gone as far as the country's intelligence service, the FSB, which demanded access to Yandex's Aliso smart home system, the Russian equivalent of Alexa. The company pushed back, although it's hard to see how long it can resist such pressure in Putin's Russia. With Americans now getting used to using AI apps like ChatGPT for therapy, for mentorship, for planning, you name it, you can see what a treasure trove that would ultimately represent for malign forces, once you get to the point where guardrails have been wholly overcome. The other part in Russia, the censorship of books and the internet and speech. Russia used to use human moderators to do all that. Obviously, that's very 20th century technology. One publishing industry source told the Medusa website, "We've always assumed that the censors and the people who report books don't actually read them. But neural networks do. So now it's a war against the AIs, how to craft a book so the algorithm can't flag it, but readers still get the message. Perhaps this will become the new Turing test for our times." The programme in action was perhaps illustrated by the police raid in May of the office and employee homes of Russia's largest publishing group, Exmo Ast. The raid was in connection with what was described as LGBTQ extremism. Surely not the sort of thing that, for example, the Trump administration would ever consider doing. You might ask, well, can't users just use a VPN, a virtual private network, to get past any of this? Because after all, famously, that's what people in China have done in the past. And no, this is not segueing into a sponsorship pitch, by the way. Well, if your devices have the government built in from the start, that may prove more difficult to do. The Russian government reportedly has a 96% efficiency target in restricting access to VPNs, and new laws have been brought in to make VPN usage an aggravating factor in criminal cases. Such laws also criminalise, quote, knowingly searching for extremist materials online. Again, we know how expansive a definition the word extremist has in the Autocrat's dictionary. So all of this matters because China built its internet infrastructure already with authoritarian control and censorship in mind. Whereas what Russia is doing is providing a vision of how such a system gets bolted on to a pre-existing system that was developed more organically with private actors and initially meeting demand rather than following any kind of a central plan. Almost all countries that transition from democracy to autocracy or from manual autocracy to digital will have to follow a similar path. The US, with its pre-existing guarantees, its powerful private tech companies, some of which at least still care about such issues, has more obstacles to overcome than many. But then, while it may not easily be able to force intrusive surveillance on everybody as a matter of course, they certainly have the ability to target intrusiveness onto anyone they deem a threat. Worth noting that the Trump administration has reactivated an ICE contract for spyware from Paragon. You might remember Paragon is the Israeli company that came up with spyware that can hack onto anyone's phone without them clicking on anything to activate it. And once installed, it can monitor calls and texts and images regardless of the encryption of the software used. Now, the Paragon software has been used in recent years to target activists and journalists in Europe. But obviously, the American security services under President Trump would never dream of doing such a thing. At least not to anyone that wasn't, a hard-left extremist lunatic or someone with a tattoo. And of course, the fake news don't count as real journalists. Paragon was bought by US private equity firm AE Industrial Partners last year. The company plans to merge Paragon with Red Lattice, its cybersecurity firm. Now, the mission of Red Lattice is to explore cyber strategies to, quote, give our nation the upper hand in securing its digital frontier. Given that Trump and J.D. Vance have spoken extensively about the threat from the enemy within, you can't help wondering what they hear in their heads when they read that mission statement.